Hi, everyone. My name is Kathy Schmidt. I've been coming to College Church for a little over a year and a half now. Some of you may remember that last summer I was baptized. Pastor Bill asked me to share with you how I've been growing in Jesus this past year and how God has moved in my life during the pandemic. I'd say two main things have characterized my growth this last year. My prayer life has deepened. Morning quiet time has been a part of my life for a number of years, so that's not new, but now I end my day that way as well. And I find that during the day, I'm drawn to prayer, most often when I get home from work in the afternoon. I'll bring questions and events to Jesus when I feel confused, upset, and also when I'm filled with joy. Sometimes I come to prayer and I just need to sit with God, to rest in and feel His presence. Secondly, God has been leading me outside my comfort zone. Through the fall and winter, I began opening up to others about my faith. During a Grow class discussion last fall about evangelism, a new friend assured me that God opens doors. Our job is to walk through. I soon began to recognize when a door was opening, and she's right. Most times, walking through isn't nearly as scary as I thought. The amount of support many of you have extended to me, reaching out after church and meeting with me over coffee, and more recently checking up by email and Zoom, sharing your journeys, your difficulties and joys, challenging me to think through a different lens, has helped me to grow so much. Thank you. So, how has God moved in my life during the pandemic? Well, in the beginning, when my school was closed, I felt God urging me to action, calling me to get outside myself. He quickly showed me again that He would open the door. I just needed to walk through. I became aware of a variety of needs in the community and stepped out, volunteering in a few different ways. God's shown me that right now He's asking me to do small things, not monumental things. Whether I'm directing traffic and packing groceries at the Survival Center or picking up food for neighbors. And God's connecting me with people I never would have known otherwise. I've even talked about College Church with some of them. This week's scripture readings include Philippians 2:13, and it's a verse that melts my heart. It says, "For God is at work in you, giving you the desire and power to do what pleases Him." I know I'm in sync with God during those times. The feeling you get when you are in sync with God's will is unmistakable. It's like gears that don't quite fit. They don't come together, and they clank around for a while. But then they slip in, and everything takes off. There's just an exhilaration and a joy when that happens. But the brutality and racial injustice of the last week has been harder for me. I began to feel it when my daughter told me of a college classmate of hers who was refused a COVID test and turned away twice in an emergency room in New York, even though she had COVID symptoms and has a history of asthma. She was a 30-year-old Black woman. She was finally admitted, and she eventually died. Then the murder of George Floyd happened, and other racially driven atrocities flooded our TV and computer screens. With the pandemic, I've known I've been in sync with God in small ways, but I'm at a loss now. I want to run ahead and I want to find something to do about it, some way to be God's hands and feet, but I find no answers. During the early days of the pandemic, I went back to lists of God's attributes I'd made over time from reading scripture, and those lists gave me powerful comfort. I returned to those lists this week in hopes of renewed comfort and guidance. But what spoke to me this time were other lists, the lists I'd made about what the Bible tells us about ourselves and humanity. And the stark reality met my eyes and awareness. These events are not new. God has been bringing them to our attention over and over. Unlike the pandemic that's an outside force affecting us, racial bias, prejudice, and violence come from within us, and our actions we're taking on each other. I've realized that I need to start within myself. Up until this last week or so, I would have told you that with God moving in my life during the pandemic, that I'm lamenting my own problems and losses less. And rather than looking backward, I'm looking forward more. And that's still true. But looking ahead feels different now. I pray for Jesus' guidance to discern God's will for me for the future. And I pray for God to open my eyes, to search my heart. Show me those parts that are not okay, and create in me a new heart. And I realize more than ever that we desperately need God to intervene in all our hearts.